We'll proceed to the prepared questions. In a survey that we conducted through the university, we came to municipal issues that were most important to students, and the most predominant issue highlighted was transit. Over the past couple of years, transit as a department has been faced with deficits. In the interest of growth and needs of students, what are your plans for addressing the deficit while also maintaining a high-quality public service transit system for students?
To start with the inefficiencies in our system. I rode the bus, the transit to school every day for 4 straight years. That's how I get to my work, even now. And there's a big difference between the need for transit in the south end and the need for transit in the north end. Now that I take the bus to the north end every day, I'm realizing that I'm taking the bus with a handful of people. While at the same time, in the south end, there's buses passing, students wait on the side of the road with "sorry, bus full" signs. This is a very Guelph problem. And it's a problem that's been in existence since I came to Guelph in 2010, and it hasn't changed at all. So to me, there's something wrong with the bureaucracy that we're having, or City Hall is just not listening to the concerns of students. And I honestly think it comes down to that. We're not learning anything new here. We know that buses in Guelph are extremely inefficient. There needs to be ways that we can look to venturing into the private sector, the experts in the private sector that run transit systems on a global basis, and help you guys have a more efficient transit system. There's no reason why we just have to look at government and the people involved to help us fix our problems. There's people out there that get paid to do this kind of stuff, and they get paid very well. And that's why there's many world-class transit systems around the world. So, let's go to the outside help, and let's look at people who have full-time positions in these fields to make Guelph's transit run more efficiently.
So transit is a key public service in a community and part of a sustainable community. We established a transit growth strategy a couple of years ago and have made a number of changes and enhancements. The good news is that our transit ridership continues to grow every year. The challenge with that is our buses are full because our transit ridership is growing. So our transit growth strategy is a couple of years in now, and so it's a good time for us to review that strategy, look at what has worked, look at where our success has been and the performance that we've achieved. But then ask the question, not just what more can we do within that transit growth strategy, but do we actually have the right strategy, and is it pitched high enough to where we want to go as a community? I think if we can just look to larger cities, larger urban centers, and look at the challenges that they're having with congestion and with transportation. And so, do we need to get ahead of the wave? Can we learn from those municipalities and actually bump transit up even higher? So that would be my commitment, is to not just look at transit for a small, mid-sized city, but how do we build the transit system that we need today that's going to serve us in the future for a sustainable city. The private sector, I will take an opportunity to address that. I believe strongly that this is a public service, and if I go and I take a look at the one private system that I know in your region, it costs more than twice as much per passenger to provide that service by the private sector. So what we forget in this is that the private sector has to make a profit. And so I very much strongly believe in providing a good public service, and I think our staff do an excellent job at doing that.
The truth of the matter is that several years ago there was a restructuring of transit, and it cost about $400,000 for the consultants. And when the new routes and the buses got rolled out, it was a disaster. The last few years has been an absolute disaster. And we've had to actually reframe transit all over again. And we're in the midst of trying to figure that out. Not only from a route perspective, but also from a scheduling perspective and even customer service-wise as well. Especially I hear much on the Twitter and on Facebook from students saying how disappointed they are in regards to transit in this city. Here's some ideas, okay? So, many municipalities actually privatize the shelters where people are waiting for the buses. We have so many of those across the cities that are not provided, and people are standing out in the rain and the cold. If we privatize those shelters and take the advertising revenue and our cost sharing from there, we can put that revenue back into the transit system. That can be better than for you. there's a second option as well. I hear much from the students here saying that 2 out of the 5 days of the week, the morning or afternoon buses after classes are full. They're standing around and they're watching transit go by, and the sign says, sorry, full, as it drives by. All right, we need to look at accommodating some more buses in regards to those 2 days that are being missed. The other thing too is we need to get way better at technology. Technology to communicate to all of the riders about when the buses are actually coming, or hey, maybe we're having a bad storm like we did last year, we had to pull the buses off the road. We need to make sure that you're being told instantly through technology so that we can better inform you so you're not waiting around all the time. There are some good things with transit happening, but it is not where it needs to be, and I know under my leadership I can take it there.
My position on transit is the fact that it is a public service, and most municipalities will fund the transit about half and half of the user fees. That's a pretty typical method. I believe that as taxpayer, myself, I've not been on a city bus in quite some time, but I actually support paying that because I believe that it's important for all of us. And we are all in this together. And the fact that transit is, we get lots of complaints. Literally I just asked 5 people to get the same complaint. In fact, that you can go from the bus downtown to university and you're waiting. It's actually can be quicker to walk at certain times. These are all things that we do know, and I do trust the fact that we are going to make some improvements. That's the whole idea of our system is we do look at things, we reevaluate it, and then we change it. Unfortunately, I think we do that way too often. I think the city workers, in the sense that they develop strategies, they implement it, we complain, and then they go back to creating another strategy. I think we could do this a little more wisely in the fact of collaborating, getting all of us together. I think if we had a problem that we had to fix right now with this approximately 200-300 people, if we are able to quietly collaborate, I believe we could do this a lot quicker than trying to push one person's agenda through. The idea with transit, obviously, is the fact that the students are going back and forth quite regularly, and the fact that the students support a great portion of the budget, leads me to the fact that I do have to question why the transit lockup was positioned right before the students came back. I don't believe that was a very wise decision, and I do perhaps think it was political. We need to look at all this as we look at this election. We've got a lot of things coming up. A lot of things are just being pushed under the rug. So please consider what we have for the future in our transit.
Okay, I'll be honest with you. I do most of my transportation by walking barefoot everywhere. I'm not an expert on the transit system, but I do love the fact that everybody here, except for Jason, because they don't see us speak yet, has made a great point. Nothing wrong with bringing experts from the private sector for collaboration. Excellent idea. They probably know their content to a certain degree. No harm in working with them. Indeed, I agree with them as far as it's key public service. I totally believe that because the transit system is usually there for the most vulnerable and poor members of our society, and it needs to be guaranteed for them. Because if you go to a for-profit entirely approach to that service, you are bleeding the ones who can afford to be bled the least. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, morally unacceptable. If it's an essential service, I'd like to think that when there's a contract up, you resolve it before a year goes by, and some transit lock-in, we can work it before supper, but not everybody wants to run the government that way, and I can't tell people to do their jobs until I'm actually doing it. Mr. Guthrie makes a great point about the ineffective rollout of the big transit or shake-up that we did. Anything can be done better. Usually can. Very few things actually fall out of the gate perfectly, so it's a great thing we think about there. The private shelters thing, I've never heard that before. That sounds like a reasonable enough idea for me. It's the kind of thing I'd be willing to consider because it doesn't seem to impede the public service of the mass transit, but it would be certainly a way to make the mass transit experience more enjoyable, which I think is the key to getting people onto the mass transit system. Because if you don't enjoy the experience, why would you go on it, right? And as far as Mr. Legere, his idea that everybody should be actively engaged is in principle fabulous. I love the idea. I don't like the idea of giving it to people who are spoiled by the technology, who don't seem to take any responsibility at all for the fact that all this wonderful stuff we have is coming from a horrible source. And until we are responsible to participate in our democracy strongly and take responsibility for where those things come from, we don't deserve to be spoiled that way. But as far as mass transit, I assure you when I'm in Mayoral, what I can do.
I am strongly in favor of keeping public services public. I'm opposed to privatization, and I'm opposed to so-called private-public partnerships. I view them as a form of privatization by another name. We've heard a lot already about the cost of reforming the transit system, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that went to outside consultants, which of course is a major issue for me. I think that it would be better if we have a deficit in transit. Obviously, we need to put some more resources there, and that money might be better spent that way than on outside consultants. Perhaps some kind of advisory council that included bus drivers would be a good idea, because it's our transit drivers, the bus drivers, who actually know what's going on. They're the experts on the ground. They know where the problems are, and they need to be consulted so that they feel included and not ignored. Interestingly, I declared on August 5th, in the midst of the lockout, and I was concerned. Part of my concern in running is that if the incumbent loses the support of unionized workers, then the only alternative might be a conservative takeover of City Hall. And so, as a centrist, I thought, if no one else is going to take the middle ground, then I would. So that's why I'm here today.